For 5 seconds, imagine the person who once controlled you is now afraid of you. Not angry, not distant, afraid. Stay with me, because if you miss this, you will miss the moment everything changed. There was someone in your life who could shift your entire reality with a single sentence. Someone whose approval felt like oxygen and whose silence felt like drowning in a room with no doors. You remember how carefully you chose your words, how you replayed conversations in your head, how you slowly began to doubt your own thoughts just to stay in their good graces. And yet something strange has happened. Recently, their tone feels different. Their usual tactics land softer. The same words that once cut deep now barely reach you. The silence that once terrified you now feels like peace. And if you look closely, really closely, you will notice something in their eyes that was never there before. Uncertainty. Here's the part most people are not ready to hear. You did not just heal. You became unpredictable. And for someone who survives by controlling emotional reactions, unpredictability is the beginning of fear. They're still performing, still casting the same lines, but nothing is biting anymore. Not because they changed, but because you did. And that shift is more dangerous than any confrontation. If you have ever felt like you were the one losing in that dynamic, I want you to do something right now. Pause for a second. Look at your own patterns. Because what you are about to understand will not just explain their behavior, it will expose your transformation. And if you recognize yourself in this, make sure you subscribe and stay until the end, because this is where most people wake up and where others fall back asleep. For 5 seconds, ask yourself this. What if the reason they are losing control is because you are no longer controllable? Stay here, because this is where the illusion begins to crack. At the core of everything you experience, there is a truth most people avoid because it is uncomfortable. The person who once controlled you did not have power in the way you thought. Their power was borrowed. It existed only in the space between your need and their approval. Strip that away, and what remains is not strength, but instability. This is what psychologists rarely explain clearly. A narcissistic mind does not rest on a stable identity. It floats. It depends on reflection, on reaction, on being seen. Without that, it begins to fracture. Now think about what has quietly changed in you. You stopped reacting. Not out of resistance, but out of understanding. You no longer chase clarity from them. You no longer defend every accusation. You no longer feel the urgency to fix what they distort. And in that stillness, something profound happens. You remove the mirror they used to see themselves. Imagine standing in a room where every surface once reflected your image, and suddenly all the mirrors are gone. That is what they are experiencing when they face you now. This is the first layer of fear. Not anger, not frustration, fear of disappearing. Because if you do not respond, if you do not validate, if you do not reflect, then who are they in that moment? You are not attacking them. You are revealing the absence they have been running from. But the second layer goes deeper, and this is where most people fail to see the real shift. You did not just stop reacting. You became internally anchored. There is a difference. Anyone can go silent. Anyone can withdraw. But very few people can sit in that silence without feeling empty. That is the difference between avoidance and transformation. You are no longer silent because you are hurt. You are silent because you are complete. And this is where their entire system collapses. Because their world is built on hierarchy, above and below, approval and rejection, power and submission. They need you to climb that ladder so they can place themselves above you. But you stepped off. You are no longer competing. You are no longer comparing. And without your participation, their structure has nothing to stand on. If this is starting to feel uncomfortably familiar, do not look away. This is the moment most people scroll past because it forces them to confront their own growth. Stay with me and make sure you subscribe, because what comes next will change how you see every relationship in your life. There is something even more unsettling happening beneath the surface. It is not just that you stopped playing the game. It is that you started seeing the rules. You began to recognize the patterns, the subtle guilt, the emotional reversals, the way your reality was slowly reshaped to fit their narrative. And once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. That clarity is not loud. It does not need to argue. It simply observes. And observation is the one thing they cannot control. Because control requires confusion. It requires emotional noise. It requires you to question yourself. But when you see things as they are, without distortion, their strategies lose precision. Their words no longer land the same way. Their tone feels rehearsed. Their reactions predictable. And suddenly, the person who once felt powerful begins to feel transparent. This is where the dynamic flips, but not in the way people expect. You are not gaining power over them. You are stepping out of the need for power entirely. And that is far more threatening. Because someone who wants power can be challenged. Someone who needs validation can be manipulated. But someone who needs nothing cannot be moved. Now we reach the most uncomfortable truth of all. The part that most people sense, but rarely articulate. You have faced parts of yourself that they have spent their entire life avoiding. Your anger, your insecurity, your fear of being alone. You sat with it. You did not run. You did not project it onto others. You integrated it. And because of that, when they try to place their chaos onto you, it does not stick. They might call you selfish, manipulative, cold. But listen carefully. Those words feel weaker now, do they not? Not because they changed their language, but because you changed your relationship to yourself. You are no longer seeking innocence. You are seeking truth. And truth does not need to defend itself. Imagine trying to throw shadows onto someone who has already walked through their own darkness. There is nowhere for it to land. And that is what creates that subtle shift you feel when they look at you now. It is not confusion. It is exposure. For the first time, they are being seen without the protection of your misunderstanding. And being seen like that is terrifying for someone who survives behind a mask. There is one final layer that explains everything, and once you understand this, you will never see the dynamic the same way again. Their control was never about strength. It was about leverage. They studied what you needed: approval, closeness, reassurance. And they learned how to give it and withdraw it just enough to keep you engaged. That was the system. But what happens when there is nothing left to leverage? What happens when you no longer need their approval? When their presence does not define your value, when their absence does not create anxiety, the entire mechanism collapses. This is what makes you dangerous in their eyes. Not because you are aggressive, not because you are dominant, but because you are free. And freedom is something they cannot negotiate with. If you have reached this point and you feel something shifting inside you, do not ignore it. This is not just information. This is recognition. Stay until the end, because the final piece will show you why your quiet presence is more powerful than any confrontation you could ever have. For 5 seconds, ask yourself this. If you no longer need their approval, what exactly can they take from you? Stay with that question, because the answer changes everything. This is where the illusion finally breaks. You were never weak. You were never too emotional. You were simply operating in a system that rewarded your reactions and punished your independence. And now, without noise, without conflict, without needing to prove anything, you have stepped out of it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. They may still watch you. They may still try to understand what changed, why their words no longer reach you, why your silence feels heavier than their anger ever did. And deep down, what unsettles them is not your strength, but your freedom, because your peace exposes something they cannot escape. That everything they built depended on something you no longer give. So do not go back. Do not shrink to make them comfortable. Do not perform just to be understood. If this truth resonates with you, subscribe now and stay close, because this is not the end of your awareness. This is the beginning of your independence. You were never alone. You just had not met yourself yet.